quantity. Speaking of quality, we have TJ and Admirable over on the other side. What do you guys think is going to happen today with some of the big storylines coming together?
I think one of the biggest storylines, Dan, is some of the different types of decks we're going to be seeing today. You know, both of the players that brought the big mage, the control mage to the field, are going to be playing today with Frozen and ShtanUdashi. So we're going to be seeing a little bit more variety today in some lineups.
Yeah, it's not only that, though. We have some other twists that are coming in, but the matchups are going to be first. Ant is going to be taking on ShtanUdashi, a big matchup for him with the all-aggression versus the standard lineup, and then Purple versus ShtanUdashi. ShtanUdashi being one of the players who's brought the big mage, that defensive mage deck.
Yeah, and Purple said that this is the toughest round one match out of any of the matches from his perspective. So he doesn't think he's favored, and that just goes to show you, you know, ShtanUdashi's risk sort of paid off with being able to beat some of these more, you know, slower anti-aggro control lists. And here's one of the decks that we wanted to highlight a little bit. It's the Dragon Combo Priest, Shinto being the only player to bring it. It's a deck that I played a lot in ranked play this year. It does some weird things. It tops out at Draconid Operative and Lyra, and I think one of the biggest things that it does is any threat on the board can become a giant threat with Divine Spirit Interfire.
Right. The meat of this deck is the fact that it's got very efficient threats. Another Historian to find Duskbreakers or Draconid Operatives, using Twilight Drakes and those Draconid Operatives to effectively replace themselves just because they're so efficient. But at any time versus the slower decks that want to try and sweep your board all at once, the combination of Divine Favor and an Interfire represents a large amount of damage, and heaven forbid they get 2 Divine Spirits in that combination. So there are they're kind of quirky cards, but if you put them together in the right spot, it is a massive one-turn kill.
Yeah, that's right. And another player that we want to highlight who's going to be playing in the first match, it is going to be Ant. And Ant actually brought an interesting lineup as well. He went, you know, with his guts. He went with a full aggressive lineup. And we call it a full aggressive lineup, even though it has some decks that you may not think would be considered aggressive, like the big Spell Priest. But they sort of work in the same vein as aggressive decks, where you just sort of play up the curve and just present too many threats for your opponents to deal with.
Yeah, to me, Big Spell Priest is a lot like Tempo Rogue. Aside from the situations where you have to fight for early board with like Backstab and SI7 Agent, for instance, this deck really just plays strong, efficient threats the entirety of the way. It has that big end game with Bone Mare and the Spiteful Summoner, which, since you only have 8 and 10 cost spells, will always summon an 8 or a 10 cost minion.
Yeah, and sort of the opposite way, ShtanUdashi was a player who's known for bringing, you know, sort of out there lineups. Shan actually brought a pretty standard lineup, and he was kind of upset about it. He's like, I wish combo decks were a little better in this format. But we'll be seeing that match. That's going to be coming up first in a little bit, Ant versus ShtanUdashi. So you're not going to want to miss that one. But for now, let's go ahead and send it back over to the boys on the desk with Frodan.
I'm excited. I'm excited because I know Saddle's a big fan of ShtanUdashi, even picking him for his packs. At the same time, though, Ant's been playing Spoiler for a lot, so it's kind of like a clash of NA and EU right off the bat there. But before we begin, we also want to play a fun segment as we get ready for Day 2 preparations, a game that I like to call Hearthstone Stars and Celebrities. What do they know? Do they know things? Let's find out. Or it's called Guess the Player.
Presented by A. Ryan Seacrest.
That's right. Well, you know, the basic rules are simple. We're going to introduce you some clues, and then we just try to guess who it is. A little silhouette. So our first player is one of the highest career earnings in his region. Did not bet on himself. Very humble person. And his country has always been represented at Worlds. Sato, I'll give you the first hack.
It's a tough one. I am going to go for Tom 60229.
Okay, that's a pretty good guess. Actually, I wasn't thinking about that. Kibler?
My pick is Surrender.
That's the person I thought of immediately. I'm not sure if TJ and Admiral want to get in on this action, too.
No thanks.
Maybe that's his way to surrender.
Ooh, appropriate.
I'll just do what I normally do and steal other people's guesses. I'm going to go with Surrender as well. That sounds like the best one of the ones you guys have presented.
It's the country thing that really does it for me. Kranich being the South Korean representative for 2 times in a row, and then Surrender being here. Surrender's my guess as well.
All right, so who is the player? It is Surrender.
I was
Congratulations,
right.
everyone
Boom.
but Sato.
Good job, Teach.
But don't worry, we have one more, so Sato, you may be able to redeem yourself.
Can I go second this time?
Sure, let's go ahead and pull it up and see who our second and last guess that player is. 20-9 game score at a season championship. over 67% win rate.
Can I go
Loves
first?
Malaga more than 42,000 career wins. And in respect to his request, Kibler, you shall go first.
Well, I'm going to have to go with ShtanUdashi, who plays more Hearthstone than anyone else alive, apparently.
All right, Sato, want to take another guess at it?
It is ShtanUdashi.
Wow.
Even split as well. 21,000 constructed wins, 21,000 arena wins. So that's 42.
As usual, hanging to the curtails of Kibler's analysis. TJ?
I'm going to go and present a completely new fact. It's an even split, 21,000 arena wins and 21,000 constructed wins. It's ShtanUdashi.
That's true.
The dead giveaway for me was the 20-9 record. That's only ShtanUdashi. That's just obvious.
To no one's surprise, yes, indeed, it is ShtanUdashi from Russia, a guy who's played more Hearthstone games than pretty much anyone else in the world. And speaking of Shtan, let's go ahead and meet our players for the first match in day number 2. First, from Russia, more than 42,000 career wins in Hearthstone. Please welcome ShtanUdashi.
ShtanUdashi, the Hearthstone supercomputer. All of those 42,000 games played at a breakneck speed.
His opponent, hailing from the United States of America, please welcome Ants.
Ant won a lot of fans in Shanghai with his big personality, hoping to win more with a big finish here.
Let's do this! ShtanUdashi versus Ant.
I don't really know about them too much.
I don't really know like a lot about ShtanUdashi. Like I saw him in the Winter Championship.
He didn't have big tournament experience too. I mean,
I know he streams, but I haven't really got to check him out. I don't think he's streamed much recently.
so if you just look at lineups, I have decent chance.
He plays really fast too, so like maybe that can do something to give me an advantage. You know, maybe he does one turn too fast, and maybe it wasn't the best thing he could be doing.
ShtanUdashi versus Ant. Ready, set, go!
All right, it's Hearthstone time here at the 2017 World Championship. Starting off Group C with one of my favorite matches of the day, Ant versus ShtanUdashi. These are two players with very distinct playstyles. But the difference between the two of them is that Ant stuck to his guns and brought that aggressive list, where ShtanUdashi went away from that combo style decks that he loves and went with a pretty standard lineup.
Yeah, Ant has been playing aggressive decks since pretty much the beginning of time from where he stands, and it is no exception in this tournament, even with the massive stakes there. And as you can see, that big Spell Priest from Ant has been banned by ShtanUdashi. He is worried about how strong that deck can be versus his lineup. For ShtanUdashi, though, when we talked to him, it was very apparent that the metagame didn't sit quite where he wanted it to be. He said, I just brought meta decks, that he experimented a lot, but couldn't find a lineup that he thought was going to beat the metagame at this tournament. And in his past, that's what he's done. He's played kind of crazy decks, and a lot of times they're control decks, and it's because control decks have super efficient ways to end games with combo-style strategies.
Yeah, we saw on his Guess the Player card, he loves Malagos decks, and you don't really have the option to play those types of decks. Maybe he could have gone with the Dragon Combo Priest, like Cinto, but went with the standard lineup, and we'll see how he's going to fare. I think the big deal here for him is going to be finding a win with this first deck, this Highlander Priest, because while it does have a big suite of removal to go up against aggressive decks, it can just get blown out early, and if he can't find a win with this deck early, he might be struggling in the long run.
And out of Ant's lineup, I would tend to say that the Murloc Paladin is probably going to be one of his tougher matchups. This deck wants to get on the board very quickly and then punish ShtanUdashi for not having an early answer. So think about Knife Juggler, think about the Rock Pool Hunters to buff up Murlocs, and the punishing effect that Murloc Warleader could really bring. Those are the things that ShtanUdashi has to worry about. So after his opening hand here, when he finds that Kazakus, that is an absolutely crucial pickup for him to stabilize the board.
Yeah, but one of the things about Murloc Paladin, it does have a ton of reload. Ant's running the lower curve Murloc Paladin with Knife Jugglers, Righteous Protectors, and Grimscale Chumps. And he's also running double Divine Favor. So there's a possibility where Ant can just load up a threatening board, get it removed, Divine Favor, reload his hand, load up another board. And Sunkeeper Tarim is also another great tool in sort of acting as reload potential, and reload potential that dodges a lot of things that Priest will do. Psychic Scream is really the only piece of removal that gets through a board like that.
Yeah, Divine Favor is a really interesting point for you to bring up for two reasons. Number one, is that is a big way for Ant to keep pushing past any potential board sweeps. But the second is that if ShtanUdashi wants to control his hand size, it means he's going to have to be taking some interesting choices at times. For instance, if that Curious Glimmerroot presented him no strong options off of this for the choice, there is a literal chance that Shtan would forego the extra card to try to mitigate an effect like Divine Favor. Call to Arms, though, pretty darn good.
Call to Arms is really funny because, one, it actually brings out some pretty high-value cards. You can bring out Loot Hoarder, Blood Mage Thalnos, Northshire Cleric, Radiant Elemental, Wild Pyromancer. All these things can fight for the board, and a few of them draw cards. But what it also does is it sort of just acts as card draw. It thins your deck, so you're more likely to draw removal cards later on. So a Call to Arms actually could end up being a pretty good pickup. Now, he may draw, say, Novice Engineer from this.
That's pretty darn good, though.
That's pretty good, I'd say.
So the Radiant Elemental does get picked off here, or the Northshire Cleric gets picked off in this spot. But Shtan's not really worried about that. I mean, this was one card that he got from a Curious Glimmerroot that was extra to really present this style of board position. And this is his entire game plan. It's just buy time. If he can keep Ant from having him under that aggressive pressure, the longer that game goes, it's better for ShtanUdashi. Eventually, Ant runs out of strong push potential, and things get a little bit tough from there. So Ant is paying very close attention to keeping his board state as strong as he can.
Yeah.
Notice here, too, leaving the Northshire Cleric around. He says, ShtanUdashi, draw as many cards as you want. I want to play the rest of my hand and then draw as many cards as you have.
And also, there's not really too many good trades. Northshire Cleric could, attack into one of these 2 attack maidens, then heal back up, but it's not removing anything.
Exactly.
If it attacks into 3-1, it kills both of them, and he does have the Redemption active as his secret, so just come right back. So definitely like these trades. And yeah, one thing to note also is Ant kept Divine Favor in his mulligan. That's how powerful the card is. In the matchup is a lot of times just keeping the mulligan because you know that Priest's hand size usually gets quite big.
Yeah, 1 cost, I think, for the potion here is absolutely vital for Shtan. And be curious to see if he's favoring combat potential or if he just wants to get stuff on board. I think that the Resurrect or the 2/2 both had viable options here.
More card draw.
More card draw is not necessarily a good thing in this spot, though. Because again, if Ant puts together just a ton of very aggressive tools, he can have those multi-turn pushes where turn after turn you have to fight off what's happening on board.
It works against him, but also in his favor at the same time.
Yeah.
You're drawing close to your removal spells, but you're also giving your opponent more value with Divine Favor, so they're getting closer to their big threats.
It's one of the reasons I like Divine Favor a lot is because it creates that mini game where how many cards do you want to draw? Like, it's really hard to think of a circumstance where you're like, drawing a lot of cards, that sucks.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever said that.
Yeah.
Unless my opponent's playing a couple Cold Oracles and some Shadow Steps.
Unless you're Surrender in the finals of the Summer Championship, right when Orange is forcing your overdraw with the Circle of Healing. Right afterwards, I bet he was pretty happy with it.
But Ant right now, he's in a situation where he's not ahead on board. That's a situation you never want to be in when you're playing Murloc Paladin. You want to be, driving the tempo of the game and forcing your opponent to be the one on the back foot and removing.
Yeah, notice he's just taking his card draw on this turn right here. He says he wants to have a much better push in the coming turns. And I think this is the right call for Ant. He's got a second Divine Favor to do this with, and look at how many 1-cost cards he just drew.
Yeah, and now ShtanUdashi, after he's seen that first Divine Favor, now that Ant's hand is quite full, he might feel more comfortable drawing extra cards, potentially with the Circle of Healing, in order to fill up his hand, because it would be less likely for Ant to have that second one.
Also right now, there's no way to kill this Knife Juggler for ShtanUdashi.
You're right, he could Shadow Visions into either...
Holy Smite's the only one left, I think, like straight
Potion of Madness would do it as well.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, but that Shadow of Pain is gone. Only got both.
Well, here's the problem is you look at
the Dragonfire.
I know, you look at this hand and you go, well, I mean, he's at 30 still.
Do I want to clear the board immediately, or do I want to have the Dragonfire Potion as insurance for when he inevitably goes wider on the board?
Mind you that card draw. Because he just saw that Divine Favor, you mentioned this, he would be more inclined. And I agree.
Let the pain speak to me.
Tried to nail that juggle to preserve the Northshire Cleric.
Actually decides not to take the card draw. He could have gotten 2 extra cards, but leave the Rockpool Hunter alive.
He's besting with the Acolyte instead.
He knows
he does need to get his hand somewhat empty as
Sure.
well. Like, he doesn't want to just be totally vulnerable to second divine favor. That's the other thing too. Your opponent draws this many cards, much more likely they find a particular one that they're looking for.
So we're going into Psychic Scream territory here for Ant. So I think that's an incentive to play these smaller minions and then play Call to Arms afterwards. But it's really tough scenario how to sequence this properly to try and play around the board. At this point, he just sort of has to ask ShtanUdashi the questions and see if he has the answers. And right now, it is between just spewing out some more one-drops or going for Call to Arms.
I think I like following up with the Call to Arms a little bit more because once Shtan potentially uses Psychic Scream, this is a card that definitely is on Ant's mind.
Yeah.
All these minions get shuffled back in, and then Call to Arms can thin that deck again. If you thin the deck right now, you will just end up with a lot of one-cost minions.
Exactly, yeah. That's why he's more incentivized going into Psychic Scream turn to play this way instead of trying to Call to Arms first and then go for it later.
But Shtan looks this board again, and he goes, "Yeah, but 30. This isn't like a ton of damage my opponent has out." And Spirit Lash also impacts this decision as well. The fact that he's given more card draw from his Acolyte of Pain, I think, is too juicy for him to pass up.
Yeah, and he gets to save Psychic Scream for a board that could be a bigger potential for a blowout later on in the game. You know, Sunkeeper Tarim, I mentioned that there's not much removal that hits it, that clears it fully.
Oh
like
boy,
Shadow Brandon,
that's a huge
picks up
draw.
Shadow Madness, Potion Madness.
And now Shtan can heal up his Acolyte of Pain and threaten more card draw. You know, there is a certain point where if Shtan draws too many cards, Ant is in a lot of trouble. And I think we're starting to approach that territory. You know, Ant has not gotten any pressure going this entire game. He's been stuffed at every step.
And when we were talking to Ant a little bit, we asked him why he decided to go with an aggressive lineup, and he just said it's really because of comfort. He didn't feel confident that he could go on a big stage like the World Championship and pilot these control decks like, you know, Cube Warlock and Highlander Priest, as well as he could pilot aggressive decks.
Yeah, he actually said, "I didn't want to mess up."
I didn't want to mess up. That's exactly what he said.
He doesn't have a lot of experience on Highlander Priest, and you know, I'd hate to bring up this reference, you know, rest in peace Hot Meowth, but he said that at World Championships last year when Hot Meowth had brought the Giants Warrior deck, the Blood Warriors deck, that he just didn't have a lot of practice on it, and as a result, he ended up making errors on stage, on the biggest stage in Hearthstone. Ant just didn't want to be put back in that territory, and Hot Meowth's a player he very actively practices with tournaments.
Yeah, we actually had a chance to sit down with Ant earlier this week and, you know, hear his thoughts on his comfortable lineup. So let's take a look.
I think a big thing that I did in Shanghai was just play something I'm comfortable with, because I was on a big stage and I just didn't want to mess up, and that's something you see me doing here. I'm playing decks I'm comfortable with because I just don't want to mess up. And just hopefully I could play better than other people because they're the ones who are nervous.
I mean, it sounds like a good strategy to me. A lot of players, when they get to the stage, they sometimes, you know, fumble when they're playing these control decks that have a lot of decisions. But it's a risky strategy at the World Championship because this is the most stacked field we've ever seen. Almost every player here has experience playing it under pressure like here, and it's tough, but you know, this is sort of where we're going to have to see this pay off for Ant, whether or not this strategy is going to work out.
One of the interesting things to me about it too is that so many players have been having success doing the math, finding out what the strongest combinations of cards are, and abusing that strength. Ant is playing so much off of intuition and the way that he feels about the game. I hope my opponents will be the ones making mistakes because they don't have that comfort and they're nervous. That is so unlike a lot of the success we've been seeing in Hearthstone lately, and he's been doing it for years.
And now it's not looking too good for Ant. ShtanUdashi has Raza online, Shadow Reaper Anduin in hand with a suite of removal here. Psychic Scream, Shadow or Death. And now it's Ant's on a clock. He's got to pile on pressure, and he's got to pile it on quick, or else he's going to be in a situation where his board's going to get removed every turn, and then once Shadow Reaper Anduin is online, he's going to start dying.
I would say the one benefit that Ant has here is that he has a wide board position with a Murloc Ward Leader. Shadow Reaper Anduin isn't the strongest against that, and he's also got a Divine Favor. So he can reload his hand size to a very large amount, and then if he sees Psychic Scream or Shadow Reaper Anduin, try to put ShtanUdashi to that pressure test. Can you either kill me or kill all of my minions? And if I've drawn this many cards, maybe you can't.
Yeah, and he is going with Divine Favor first. I think this is just for Gentle Megasaur. He wants to leave that 4 mana open in case he draws it. Yeah. With 3 Murlocs on the board, there's a chance he may not get that many as this game goes on.
no offensive options.
Whoa. Plus 3 health with the Murloc War Leader in hand could be good, but he's not putting on any pressure with this health. And it's still just as vulnerable to Psychic Scream.
Wow, Shtan. I mean, down to 8 cards in deck. You know, he's going to keep drawing heat at this point. A lot of his cards were thinned out from that call to arms and the massive draw that he had in that mid game. It's going to be quite tough, I think, for Ant to pull this one off. I mean, if we're looking at the cards that Shtan hasn't drawn yet. He hasn't drawn Tar Creeper. He hasn't drawn Arcanine Soul Priest. And he hasn't drawn Dragonfire Potion.
Still a ton of removal left in the deck.
Shtan, he's going to start pointing damage to face, saying, Ant is not going to be able to sufficiently pressure me from this board position, and as a result, I'm going to start putting him to the test. Afterwards, I can Psychic Scream and just keep chipping away the life total.
Yeah, and even then, you know, with Mind Blast in hand, all of a sudden the Velen draw becomes, you know, very close to lethal. He's also got a 0-cost spell with Circle of Healing in the hand to deal that extra 4 damage with Velen. So, I think this is Ant's basically last push, but I just don't see him getting it done here. I just don't think he has enough time.
I would tend to agree. Well, still pretty poor options. No real offensive potential. Won 2 Mega Swords in a row.
Yeah, I think Living Spores may be the choice. Plus 3 health and Living Spores don't play around Psychic Scream.
I think you got a health here and just hope that it's the Dragonfire Potion instead of the Psychic Scream. Because it, like, the 1/1, you know, plants, that's not really going to be the pressure he needs. Maybe with the Sunkeeper Terram. The stealth is obviously off board.
Sunkeeper Terram is the one that I'm looking at the most, because Sunkeeper Terram would fill up his entire board. And if he's looking at playing Sunkeeper Terram over the next couple turns anyway, the health of those minions are going to get reduced anyway.
It would fill up his entire board, though, is the key.
Ah, that's true, yeah.
You have to have space to be able to play it. Shtan obviously going to take this time to Psychic Scream. Such a powerful card.
Yeah, and with Dragonfire Potion being drawn, you know, Sunkeeper Terram plus Righteous Protector may be able to stop it a little bit, but, you know, ShtanUdashi, again, he's just getting close to being able to have lethal damage. A Velen draw off the top would pretty much do it.
Reporting for duty.
A couple of 1/1s here. Down to 18. And here's the hope.
Yeah.
I think Ant has fought about as hard as he could. Shtan is just, again, he kept stuffing threats every step of the way.
Yeah.
I am curious to see if Shtan can figure out a way to just, you know, simply go face with some of this damage. It feels like he's still a little bit off, but quite close over 2 turns.
Yeah, and a Velen draw at any point is game-ending just with Mind Blast, not even with Circle of Healing. Arcanine Soul Priest draw would give him another board clear. So at this point, he's got what he needs to win the game. As long as he just keeps clearing the board, he's A-okay. He's got Shadow Word Death for Quarter Creepers, which he hasn't seen yet. I think this one's in the books, Admirable.
Yeah, I think it's 2 roads to El Dorado. You kill all their stuff or you kill them. You know, both of his options are quite viable at this stage. You know, I am wondering, though, like, did we speak too soon on that? Because Ant gets 3 Murlocs here suddenly. He's got the Corridor Creeper. He gets another one from his hero power, and he's holding 2 Murloc War Leaders. So if Shtan, like, missteps for a spot, is that just it, or does he have lethal in hand with, you know, say the Mind Blast and
I think he's got. If the Priest of the Feast sticks, he does have lethal in hand unless a taunt is present.
Yeah, 16 with the Mind Blast in the Circle and the Cabal Talon Priest. Just that. Yeah, that's done.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Stan did play those last couple turns with the calculations in mind that he would have enough, and now Quarter Creeper's played, so Shadow Word Death is activated, which means he's got even more than enough damage for lethal. Throw a Binding Heal on top of that, he's good to go, and that means that ShtanUdashi is going to take game number 1 in the first series of the day.
And honestly, it's sort of a key thing to look at in this matchup was just on turn 2. Shtan picked up Shadow Word Pain and killed the Murloc. That Murloc hadn't died, Shtan would have taken considerably more damage over that early game. That one offset of a minion was super important.
Yeah, I mean, he really never got to the point where he was under threat at all. He had removal sweeps for everything, the call to arms early on in the game, let him fight for the board, but You know, we talked about how ShtanUdashi, this is going to be the deck that he needed to win with, and finds a win with it in the very first game.
Yeah, I do fear a bit for Jade Druid. That's a deck that I had my eye on this entire tournament, but curious to see how it goes.
All right, well, ShtanUdashi takes game number 1. We'll see if Ant's lineup can get the job done with this aggressive lineup that he says he feels comfortable with. We'll be right back with game number 2 after this.
The quest for Hearthstone's greatest prize continues when the Hearthstone World Championship returns.
I am Alexei Bursakov. In game, I am known like ShtanUdashi, and I am from Russia. When I started play Hearthstone, I didn't know about cybersport a lot. I just play Hearthstone because it was interesting for me, and a little bit later I got good result and won some tournaments, and it's really awesome.
ShtanUdashi finds the burn, and he will be the 2017 Hearthstone Winter Champion.
I'm super excited about this tournament. It's really good city, nice wave. So looking to win some games here. At least to win one. This one.
I started streaming 2 years ago, and it was a good thing. Sometimes it's for fun. It's really help you. Streaming helped me a lot to be good at the game.
I met my girlfriend on Hearthstone stream. She watched my stream. We talked with her, and after we meet. I'm really happy what I meet her, and Hearthstone helped me in real life. So it's awesome.
Hearthstone, it's a friendly game. We communicate with our players. Yes, sometimes we go dinner together, we discuss about games. A lot of good guys play Hearthstone, so... I think my chances is decent. I don't really think about a lot of players are worse than me, or I am better than some, but I think we have like minimum the same chances as the most players. Of course, I want to win HCT Worlds. It's main goal.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the 2017 Hearthstone World Championship. We're about to get into game number 2 of Ant versus ShtanUdashi. Ant on the back foot now, and Ant's played a lot. He's played a lot of Hearthstone over the years, even going back to the 2014 America's Championship. And perhaps nobody knows more about Hearthstone than Ant, but he's had to learn a few new things come with success in the world of Hearthstone.
It's so hard to believe that I'm here right now.
He is extremely, extremely happy.
Yeah, I am living the dream. That tournament definitely changed my life. I think the biggest change that's happened was like, I mean, just the amount of traveling I've done. I got to play in BlizzCon.
Yar!
I had the Sydney trip.
Well, if you're Ant, you gotta be feeling pretty good here.
Then I had a trip to Germany.
And still has plenty of game left.
There was another tournament in LA. I didn't think I was gonna do this much traveling when I started the year, for sure. A lot more people get to see you, so you get like a lot more exposure on your stream. I was trying to play decks that I wouldn't play in Worlds because like I would see like I would open my viewer list and just see like Orange HS. So like I knew these people were watching me, so I would just play decks that I didn't think I was gonna play. Which is the funny part because like I was playing the Spiteful Priest that I brought today, and then someone just asked me like, "Hey, what are your feelings on the deck?" I was like, "Man, this deck sucks. Like, I would never play this." And then here I am playing it in Worlds. I don't know. It's been fun. So I guess we hope it keeps going like this.
And look at you now, and that big spell Priest, it's banned in the series. So it turns out you did something right, at least against ShtanUdashi's lineup. But yeah, Ant has had a lot of success over the past year, and he's hoping to continue that success in the World Championship. But right now he's down in the series to ShtanUdashi after losing against that Highlander Priest in game 1. But now we're going to go to Aggro Druid for Ant versus the Temple Rogue for ShtanUdashi.
Yeah, I will say that I do think Highlander Priest is going to be a tough win for any number of his decks if ShtanUdashi can get off on the footing that he did.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Killing some early minions. For me, the biggest talk of this tournament for players, more standard lineups, is what they did with Druid. How did they build Druid to fight off against any potential aggression? A lot of players went with Aggro Druid, like we're seeing from Ant here. This deck wants to just out-pressure your opponent as quickly as possible. It's a very feast or famine style of strategy, where you will be going all in quite a bit in hoping to beat your opponent. However, we did see Muzzy play this deck yesterday, and in the Tempo Rogue matchup, he simply played to his outs. He just choked out the board position, and when the cards were down to nothing, he said, "I have Bittertide Hydra and 2 living manas I can draw to end the game."
That's what it's about. But, against Rogue, it's about going wide on the board. It's about those wide board states. Tempo Rogue is great at, fighting for board early on, but once they lose control of the board, especially against a wide board, they just can't deal with it. They don't have, that rule. They have Bile Spine Slayer to take out 1 big minion. They have Backstab SI7 Agent to clean up little pieces of the board. But if you can get a big board and keep buffing it up, that's where Aggro Druid really shines in this matchup, and that's what you have to do. But it's really volatile, because if you lose control of the board early on in the game, Aggro Druid has a very tough time coming back.
Wow, look at this. Ant choosing to trade off the SI7 Agent here. That is quite an interesting choice for me, because I'm looking at Power of the Wild in hand alongside the Dire Mole, and if he ends up pushing face in that spot, he could get some favorable positions here, but I think he anticipated this exact style of thing happening, just on putting more stuff on board, and him having to fight for control a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'd say typically about the first 4 turns is where Aggro Druid wants to fight for board, and then follow up afterwards for the push.
Yeah, and one thing to note is I believe Ant kept all the cards in his mulligan, which was the South Sea Captain, Druid Swarm, and Enchanted Raven. So ShtanUdashi's probably got his eye on Galaka Crawler. I think that's going to be one of the reasons why we might see him pulled off on Pirates for a bit, unless he absolutely has to play them.
Oh, that's about the end of fighting for the board if you're Ant in this spot.
Yeah.
And the nice attack with the Captain trade, Backstab, having to be used on either Dire Mole or Crypt Lord at this point. Really not strong options, and Shtan is out of ways to affect the board, really, in this spot. He's got a couple Fireflies to pick this away, but Ant's board is going to start growing very quickly afterwards. He's actually hitting the Dire Mole with this. So Shtan wants to draw Bile Spine Slayer and something he can use to go along with it. Is this enough pressure for Ant to start pushing? Well, probably now.
Double buffs drawn, so...
I'm curious if you make a 3-2 here with the Power of the Wild, or if you want it spread out across your board in this spot. Because Bile Spine Slayer has to be a card Ant's thinking about.
But he's seen Backstab. And Bile Spine Slayer, we're going into turn 5. He might be able to trade off his board. Okay, a little bit wider.
So he favors the wide board position over the immediate damage in this spot. And that actually may spell some trade work here for Ant as well.
Yeah, I think, spreading out that board to play around specifically Bile Spine Slayer is good. That's why I think this Crypt Lord trade in the Elven Minstrel, definitely a good idea. And now continuing to push, all of a sudden Savage Roar is a ton of damage.
Wow. Backstab drawn for ShtanUdashi.
I think that's the best draw in the entire deck.
That is a huge draw right now. Yeah. There's only 1 backstab left. He was 5% to draw that backstab. But a second Crypt Lord for Ant.
But this Galaka Crawler is dead since he has his own South Sea Captain on the board. you know, he may be encouraged to like trade off this house captain to get Glockenkraller on board, but he knows that pirates are still a possibility. There's a ton of pirates in this deck. Swashbucklers.
Shtan's like about
deckhands.
He's like out of stuff now. Like he's gonna have to play a pirate or something.
This Glockenkraller is going to get value. And there's the Cairn. And you know, one thing about the Cairn, and I think it was Purple who said this, when dominant 5/5s are in the meta, Cairn becomes much worse. And he was talking about like Raza being in a lot of decks as well.
Corridor Creeper was
Corridor
the one
Creeper
he had
in what was the big one, I think, when he made that analysis. And ShtanUdashi, despite Cairn making its way into Temple Rogue, say in Summer Championship, now it's kind of on its way out because of Corridor Creeper.
You know, I do have to wonder a bit about how much trading Ant did past turn 4, though. The Cairn was also a great draw for ShtanUdashi because it guarantees this Bone Mare land. And now Ant has a lot of damage to go through if he wants to get to another push point. Is that enough?
That is. Savage Roar, he goes in with the Sousy Captain and his face into the Cairn, and that's exactly 11 damage on the backswing. 7 from the Corridor Creeper and 4 from the Dire Maul.
And Ant's just counting it again and again, and you see his motion, like, wait, is this it? This has to be enough. Like,
this is why Ant brought aggressive decks. He said he doesn't want to mess up.
Count it again and again.
That's
I
right.
don't care how long
you don't
it
want to
takes
mess up this
yeah.
one.
Ant's going to tie up the series. He's making so sure that he does not mess this up in this spot.
When you're on a big stage like this, sometimes you forget that 7 + 4 equals 11, but he finds it, and that's going to be Ant taking game number 2.
And look at his face. He's like, I can't believe it took me that long to count that. You don't think nerves matter on a big stage? It doesn't affect the way you think. Look at that turn right there. This is Ant's comfort zone.
That's right. And of course,
What was I thinking was what you
what
just
was
said.
I thinking? That's right. And, you know, Ant taking the win, a big one for him. And a cool thing is that Ant's got a little bit of support in the crowd. He's got his childhood best friend. There's Antonio. He's got the Team Ant shirt on. There it is. They've been best friends, I think he said 18 years, since 2nd grade. He calls him his brother. The first time he introduced me to him, he introduced him as his brother. And he said it was because one day Antonio went over to his house and he just never left. Became his brother.
That's what I did with TJ.
I'm still trying to get him to leave.
Right now.
And what in the world is that?
That's Koala Ant.
That might be the greatest picture I've ever seen. Antonio, give me a thumbs up if you're selling those shirts. He gave a thumbs up. I saw him. I'll hit you up after this game.
I know what that pressure feels like too, where you're like, I know I got him. I just don't know how I got him.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Prince Keleseth opening hand. You know what that means? He's drawing patches.
I saw a shadow step.
I did see a shadow step. I see a double shadow step. Oh my goodness gracious.
My. This is not good for ShtanUdashi. You know, ShtanUdashi looking at this position, and he has his own Keleseth. Ant has 3 Keleseth. TJ, this is like, you hear about this happening, but it doesn't really happen that often. This is like witnessing a supernova. They happen, I just don't know when or how.
Soak it in. 1 Keleseth, 2 Keleseth. And ShtanUdashi gives him the smile. He knows. He knows. So now every minion in Ant's deck has +3/+3.
Oh, you mean like this guy?
Like the patches that's about to be summoned from this deck, which is going to be a 4/4.
Holy smokes. And he got a Shadow Caster. So here's the thing. Shtan's going to kill that 4/2 patches. Is there a chance that Ant finds himself Shadowcaster against Keleseth at some point in this game?
I don't think it's going to live that long, but so the one thing about having
oh my gosh, it doesn't even matter what he tries. I mean, he could draw like River Crocodile.
Next turn, he's going to play 2 5/6s with taunt on turn 4. So I was going to say one of the downsides. if any, I guess, of playing
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Shadowstep, is that you have less resources to work with. But you make up for the lack of resources by every minion in your deck having +3/+3. So
the caveat is you still have to pressure your opponent.
yeah, that's the caveat. So sometimes you can make that play and then just draw dead. You draw backstab, all of a sudden those three cards that you spent in your opening hand to buff these cards is not as good. I think Bone Mare is not bad. It's a 7-mana 8/8 that you just plop on the board.
Yeah, War Golem's pretty good.
It's even better than War Golem. It's a War Golem that was Keliseth buffed once.
How is Shtan gonna win this game?
A lot of those.
Yeah, it's gonna take a lot of those. He has a lot of them, but yikes! There's still a 5/5 after that.
Yeah.
He could Shadow Caster the.
Well, if he does that, then he doesn't get the added benefit of them being strong. So they're just little baby chain gangs.
That's right.
Well, he can Sousy Captain, and then Sousy Deckhand is the minion that's been in his hand since the opening.
Yeah.
So that's still just a
Vile Spine as well.
A nice fair 2/1 with charge if you have a weapon. That's all it is.
So many options.
So again, you can still fall behind on tempo with less resources to work with.
But look, Keliseth is a big deal in the matchup. There's no question about that.
Shen did have his own too.
SI7 agents, Vile Spine Slayers, captains at the right time. Those are true power hitters in the matchup as well. So when Ant is able to fight what ShtanUdashi has by having these similar effects, that's where Shtan really finds himself in a lot of trouble. It's that Ant is answering back with the same style. And Shtan does find a Shadow Step though, and for Vile Spine, that's a big deal. Ant right now does not have a way to activate his Vile Spine.
We said the way the ShtanUdashi is going to win is with Vile Spine Slayers, and having the 2 early on.
He's big, but that card is actually quite poor, I'd say, in the Rogue matchups.
Yeah.
Shtan is heading into the Bone Mare territory, which is where it's most dangerous for Ant. And he's just fighting from this weird footing where he's like, play a big thing, go. Now I'm looking at this. Wow. Shtan draws Sarnak Chain Gang.
He is going to have a lethal setup going into the following turn, I believe, because this Vile Spine Slayer is going to be 3 mana. Sarnak Chain Gang is going to come out. He's still pushing 6 damage after this.
It's the Vile Spines. It's the SI7 agents, the well-timed captains.
And I think that's game over. I think Stan's done it. Was he need Vanish from Swashbuckler? That might be his only out because
it's dead. He literally has to pull something miraculous off of Swashbuckler.
Yeah, and I think it's got to be Vanish. And Venom Weapon is not going to do it. That doesn't help him at all. It doesn't stop any of the damage. Even if he Vile Spine Slayers one of these minions that are on the board, he's still looking at 12 points of damage.
I look back at this game, I wonder, should Ant have gone for the Keliseth on 1 with the coin? Shadow Step that multiple times. And then had the answer afterwards. That would, because he didn't do that, right?
I don't know, man. I don't know if you. I don't know if you've ever had Shadow Step, double Shadow Step Keliseth, but I'm doing that.
Wow, ShtanUdashi
did it.
Comes back from that opener from Ant, and a very decisive win after those key turns. 2 Vile Spine Slayers leaves Ant stranded with no board.
Yeah, we were talking about with our friends at HS Replay backstage yesterday. Prince Keliseth Rogue, when Keliseth is played multiple times, has an 80% win rate. That's insane. But we're going to see if Ant can come back from that one in game number 4 right after this.
Take 5 with Team 5.
Flavor text.
Any favorite flavor text?
Oh no.
Man. Yes, I think my favorite is Mayor Noggenfogger. His effect is everything's random, and his flavor text is, this flavor text was generated at total random, and if it happens to make sense, that is purely by coincidence.
Shadow Ranger, is that his name? I think his flavor is, we went there. You know, if you thought we were going to bring it here, yes we did. We brought it right to you, and here it is.
What is the purpose of the flavor text? I think part of the purpose is it has no purpose. It's just something we just totally add because we think they're funny. General wisdom is a lot of the best ones are the ones you write last. And you think of something so crazy and off the wall that, like, at least at 2 a.m. you think it's funny.
I think it just shows that we don't take ourselves too seriously. But at the end of the day, each of these minions has a soul and a spirit to it, and something that the team put a lot of their heart into. And I think the flavor text is one way to get some of that to come across.
There's one, the Cruel Taskmaster one, and it says something like, makes you come to work on Sundays. And I thought that was like annoying office humor that I like.
Our executive producer wrote the voice line for Carry and Grub. It's Carry On My Wayward Grub, which was it's pretty great if you know that song.
It kind of just does such a good job matching just what the minion was.
Carry on my wayward grub. And that, like, it was, I don't know, I'm just old enough for that to be really funny.
Well met.
My name is ShtanUdashi. I'm from Russia, Yekaterinburg. I play in Hearthstone like 6-8 hours a day. When I don't play in Hearthstone, I sleep. Best things on the HCC is you can see these beautiful places. It's my first time when I went to tropical Bahamas, so the first time I see islands. It's looking really awesome and blue.
ShtanUdashi, he's a player that he's proficient in many things. If you saw on his card earlier, he had the highest dual-class arena win rate in the entire world by like a full win on average above everybody else. So
we actually share something in common there, because I believe I had the highest dual-class arena retire rate in the world.
Wow, that's impressive, Admirable. All right, well, let's get into it. Game number 4, Ant versus ShtanUdashi. And Jade Druid is going to be the deck.
Yeah, and this is the matchup that I'm worried about for a lot of players, is how their Jade Druid deck will perform against aggression. This deck oftentimes has not been able to fend it off properly, and so Shtan has decided to compensate for that by bringing the Oaken Summons version of it instead. The idea is that you play Oaken Summons to gain 6 armor, and that recruit for a 4 or less cost minion means that you're getting the Ironwood Golems, or you're getting a Fandral. There are no Jade Spirits in this deck, so your ramp potential on the Jade's a little bit lost, but you make it up for that defensive potential, try to stabilize, and hope that your endgame can get it done, because there's still plenty of that when late stage.
Yeah, if we look at the stats, the Agents Replay stats for this matchup in particular, and the next matchup for Ant, which is going to be Temper Rogue versus Jade Druid, they're both pretty heavily favored for Ant's lineup. He should be theoretically in a pretty good spot, but the thing about it is he has to win twice against it. And beating it twice in a row becomes a little bit harder, even if you're pretty heavily favored in that regard.
And we're already seeing the big payoff turns for Ant. He's got Divine Shield on these Murlocs, and Gentle Megasaur's coming down. This Gentle Megasaur is the big payoff minion for this deck, and the sooner you get it down, the sooner your opponent starts struggling. Poisonous is a great way to kick this off. And I think ShtanUdashi is in a heap of trouble in this spot.
Yeah, and he gets to keep the minion around as well because the Divine Shield is active. So
I do want to note how important it might have been for Shtan to actually use that Jasper Spellstone on turn 1, because it opens up this little Murloc to dying off to a hero power post-swipe in a couple circumstances here. So Shtan actually has a nice setup to start fighting against this. My question is he going to be able to battle off the 2 Corridor Creepers and Call to Arms afterwards?
Yeah, the reload is going to be the toughest part, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Druid struggles in this matchup specifically is because Murloc Paladin just has a lot of reload. A lot of times they can get through Spreading Plague and still have a board when they come out of it all.
It's actually quite good at doing that.
Yeah, it's very good at doing that. Gentle Megasaur, Murloc War Leader, a lot of times you're buffing your Murlocs to a point where you're getting through and then your board is still pretty healthy. And the Druid does lack that wide removal. Swipe is good, but a lot of times you can build your board as a Murloc Paladin to play around Swipe. Murlocs do have a good amount of health. Ant does run Cold Light Seer, which can buff up his minions as well. It's really tough to maneuver around all those things. Yep. And you have to also build your own pressure too. You have to make your Jades big enough to eventually out-pressure the Paladin at some point once you're able to clear through that early stuff.
Shtan shifts in his chair as well. He knows that this setup is a dead giveaway for what's in his hand. And so Ant is just going to take that time, it looks like, to just put big stuff on board. Spreading Plague is very much a card on his mind that he wants to be strong against. And at the same time, he's anticipating Swipe in this spot. So Shtan's got a 2-pronged attack against him right now.
Yeah. And Oaken Summons, this minion will just be killed by the poisonous Rockpool Hunter here.
Does have to trade off, though. And now there's a Fandral left in ShtanUdashi's deck for that second Oaken Summons. Cold Light Seer, however. So does he preserve the poisonous minion, or does he feel like he wants to fit his deck out with Call to Arms?
I think that Rockpool Hunter is pretty valuable. So it's going to be a 2 health, so it's going to survive another swipe. They will die to a Jasper Spellstone, but he's presenting more threats, and that's exactly what he's doing. And it keeps the reload with Call to Arms in his hand.
The Eye is looking quite weak right now. Shtan's at 13. And even if he kills the 5/5 Corridor Creeper, he's still looking at 11 damage across the board. What choice does he have?
So, Jade's still pretty small for ShtanUdashi. Righteous Protector, though, not a great pickup, but what it does do is protect these more valuable minions. But Righteous Protector is terrible into Spreading Plague.
That's the magic draw for Shtan right now.
Yeah, the Murlocs can be a little bit better because they can be buffed by Murloc War Leader, they can be buffed by Gentle Megasaur, they can get over Spreading Plague a lot easier, but really the only thing you can use to buff the Righteous Protector is Rowling Blade, which barely buffs it, or Sunkeeper Terran, which Ant does not have access to.
Here's the idea for Ant. My opponent would have played Spreading Plague if they had it.
Yeah.
I don't think ShtanUdashi's got it, and I'm going to move in. Shtan now has to draw Spreading Plague, or it looks like this game's going to end.
Maybe Branching Paths?
Second swipe?
Second swipe?
Must move quickly.
He will
now
have
Furion?
He will have 2 draws next turn because he's got the Wild Growth, so he'll hit his natural draw plus being at 10 mana. He'll be able to get that excess mana out to draw an additional card, but... And now Ant, I believe, deciding whether or not he wants to attack with the weapon.
He's thinking about not killing the 2/2, so that way Spreading Plague is mitigated sometimes. It would force 2 more of Shtan's mana in that spot.
Yeah.
But if he draws Spreading Plague, I think he's done for anyway. And Shtan draws Spreading Plague. Are you kidding?
With 2 copies in his deck, that was... I believe around the 12% mark with Wild Growth. It could have been, all the way up to around 23% with a couple draws, but still not too likely. But he picks it up.
30 extra health. for Shtan to work with.
He is at 6, though, and we talked about how Murloc Paladin, out of all the aggressive decks, is the one that can get through Spreading Plague the easiest, but it's still very hard. You still need more tools, and if that's a Divine Favor pickup, wow, ShtanUdashi has also been able to empty his hand.
It's still 2 cards.
Pretty well. It's still 2 cards, that's right.
So Gentle Megasaur could still be a real pickup that Ant can get back in the game with here. Murloc Warleader can be a decent pickup. You know, he still has some gas left, but this makes it significantly harder.
Yeah, Murloc Warleader would actually be pretty great. He could kill off, I believe, every single one of these Spreading Plague tokens. Outside of maybe one. Because he'd have to trade in a minion. If he plays a Righteous Protector and gets the full value of the card draw to get 2, he'd have to trade in a minion preemptively first. But I think he's got to go for it. 2 cards for Ant.
Oh, you know what Ant's going to do, I think? I think he's going to hold this Divine Favor.
Ultimate Infestation?
Yeah,
that's kind of risky.
That might be his only way back in the game, though. I mean, his 2 cards going to be enough, is his thought. I quite like this, actually.
So the Oaken Summons, the second one, has been in hand. The one on the far left has been in hand since turn 2. So that could be Ant's read. That card on the far left, Oaken Summons, since it's been in the hand in turn 2 and hasn't been played, Ant might have a big read that Oaken Summons is Ultimate Infestation.
Exactly.
I think that's the only reason why he wouldn't play that Divine Favor, is because he's expecting Ultimate Infestation to be that card. He's expecting it to be played this turn, since this would be the last turn that ShtanUdashi could play it safely. And then he's going to try and reload with Divine Favor after. But his read at this point is incorrect. And that's an Oaken Summons.
Now, Fandral does not work the same with Branching Pass as it does with some other effects. It is a choose twice effect, not a choose one, not a choose one effect.
Yeah.
So he does still get to choose 2 options, but he doesn't get to combine them all into one massive effect.
Now, Jade Idol is not that. Jade Idol is a choose one, but I don't think he wants to play it at this point because the fact that he doesn't want to dilute his deck with Jade Idols, which aren't that powerful at this point. He'd rather draw more Spreading Plagues. He'd rather draw Ultimate Infestation before he gets the Jade Idol back to his deck.
I think this might be too little too late, though.
Gentle Megasaur was the next draw, so if he had played Divine Favor last turn, he would have had access to Gentle Megasaur. But he trusted in his read that Ultimate Infestation was the next card.
Or Poisonous as well.
He would have been able to push through. He wouldn't have lethal after that setup.
No.
Because he would have had to trade in one of the Murlocs before he could play the Gentle Megasaur. So I believe he wouldn't have been able to push through any damage, but still, he would be in a much better position. But again, players on this big stage, they make those reads, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong.
I honestly feel like it's a pretty good read, too. I think Shtan had multiple instances where he could have played a second Open Summons, and while he had strong turns otherwise, you know, who's to say he wouldn't have tried to pull a threat out of his stack and really get the ball moving from there. I think I still like Ant's call, and just this time he happened to get punished.
Yeah. But now Ant will still have reload once Shtan eventually draws cards. Shtan will have to eventually draw cards if he wants to win the game.
Yeah.
And so Ant's...
Or he can just shuffle in a bunch of Jade Idols. That's like game over.
Well, they're starting to get big enough now to where they're a threat. And now each one he draws, I mean, if he draws a 1-mana 6/6, 1-mana 7/7 each turn, that's still pretty good. So
he got over the hump was the big one.
Yeah.
And that big hump was quite literally the Spreading Plague. Without Spreading Plague, I think Shtan was done that turn.
Yeah, and now that window for Ant has sort of passed, because now ShtanUdashi Ultimate Infestations and draws cards, Ant doesn't have time to Divine Favor, reload, and then go on a counter aggressive. So this one's looking pretty grim.
I'm trying to think of a way for him to get back.
Deathwing?
That's not in his deck.
It used to be played in Murloc Paladins. I believe Hoy, when he won the Spring Championship, he had Deathwing in his Murloc Paladin deck, yeah.
I wonder.
Ant's looking at trades and going, how can I force my opponent into the most awkward spot that I can get maybe Sunkeeper tear him and get out of it? Wow, the chance to draw that went down by a lot, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, he shuffled 6 Jade Idols into his deck just last turn. Almost
and
all
here
these
they all
are
are.
going to be Jade Idols. And draws Arcane Tyrant as well to be able to reload. And Ant's going to be able to Divine Favor and pick up to 4 cards. And second Divine Favor.
My.
Yikes. And there's just nothing. All of his minions are small. Even a call to arms wouldn't be enough. There's 18 damage on sitting on board, so he's not dead, unless it was a second swipe that were to come out, since ShtanUdashi still has one of those left.
Yeah, he's not dead yet, is really what I'm looking at. I mean, Shtan's back to 23 is the thing. You know, once you get past that stabilizing point, that's when Jade Druid becomes a nigh insurmountable. You have to pressure them before they assemble this ultimate combination of cards.
Yeah, and of course, Ant's going to play this one out. It's the World Championship stage. You want to make sure you account for everything, but ShtanUdashi, his Jade Behemoths are quite large and in charge. At this point, Brashani just wants to make sure that he's crossing his T's and dotting his I's, making sure that everything is going to make sure that there's absolutely no way he
has no way to win.
Yeah, zero ways. He's going to try and reduce his chance to win to 0. And with lethal presented on board, Ant's got nothing.
Try your hardest, but sometimes it's not in the cards. Ant gets squelched. The huge draw from ShtanUdashi right in that 10-mana turn, and that means he's going to move on to the winner side of this bracket. Ant's going to fall down to the elimination match, which he'll play later today, but ShtanUdashi right now proving his worth.
Jade Druid was the deck that we were worried about. Ant had a few favorables, but Spreading Plague was able to get the job done. And the read that Ant made with that Divine Favor could have changed things, but at the end of the day, ShtanUdashi comes out on top. He'll move on to face the winner of Sinto versus Purple, which is going to be happening in a while, but Ant is going to move down the elimination bracket. He's just one loss away from being eliminated from the World Championship. But for now, let's head over to the stage with Frodan, who's waiting with some words with our winner.
Congratulations, Stan. That was a pretty tight last game there, being able to barely, get it out of there. But I want to ask you about how you feel now that you've defeated Ant. Do you feel like he was one of your harder opponents in the group, or do you feel like maybe another opponent might be even harder?
It's not the harder opponent. I think it was probably the best opponent for me, but it was not the easiest game of my life for sure. So I think Sintalol probably the most harder opponent. So cheering for Purple.
All right, well, he definitely wants to come out ahead. You know, I think people are talking about Europe's performance in general, but people look at you as being one of the best European players. So I think I want to ask you, do you feel personal responsibility to help pick up some of the results for your entire region?
I will try my best. So now scorer for Europe, not the not the best one, but we will try with Sintalol and Neria to improve it.
At least Stan's going to do his part. Congratulations, ShtanUdashi, who won his first match. Please give a round of applause. And with that, we're going to hand over to Raven and Saddle over at the analyst desk.
What an amazing series to kick off the day. ShtanUdashi being able to just continue to show his dominance, even if Hearthstone hasn't been his 100% focus throughout the year. He's managed to get out there a few tight matches, but he made it work, and now hoping to make Purple be victorious as he goes up against Sintalol in the next matchup. Sintalol, one of the newcomers, effectively.